Recording in progress. Hello, Lucy.
All right.
I know we started chatting and we went on one, and I just needed to pause. We needed to pause that, to capture it, capture all the conversation that we'll be sharing today.
Mm.
Mm. Would you like me to introduce you, or would you like to introduce yourself?
Go ahead if you like. Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
So, we've got Lucy today, Lucy Grace, and it is my deepest honor. It is my deepest joy and my deepest longing. I've been waiting for this. I think we tried first to arrange this back in May, if I remember right. It's taken a while.
6 months. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
always the right timing.
Mm.
And this is the first of perhaps a series of conversations that me as a mother want to bring out to the world to talk about very important topics about spiritual awakening and how can we embody the deepest mother in us,
Mm.
our children.
Mm.
How can we cultivate a world in raising children in these turbulent times? I've shed a lot of tears
Mm. Mm.
with that question. So it's coming from a very deep personal burn and
Yeah.
place of I know nothing. And yet I have so much trust in your wisdom. So I'd love to hear your journey in parenthood, in motherhood. Uh,
Mm.
but let me introduce you first. So Lucy is a mystic. I've got it from your website. A
Mm.
mystic, spiritual guide, a holistic therapist, a poet, a beautiful mother, I'm sure. And I've known Lucy for, is it the past year now? Been attending his Santas. Well, I'm going to put all your details for people to reach you. And also through her poetry book, which is this one. I'm just going to put it out now for people to
Mm.
look, and I'm going to put the details here. But I want to start with how I came across Lucy,
Mm. Mm.
because I feel this communicates a deep sense of hope, which is a place that is beyond hope, even
Yeah. Yeah.
into the shared field of being held, what I like to call by the Great Mother.
The great mother. Yes. Beautiful. Mm.
So, your name, Lucy's name, was given to me a couple of years ago in my dream state. Dreams has always been a portal for me. You know, there's different portals for people. Dreams have always been a portal where I got very specific information, specific, um, and I did the usual thing that I do quite often, which was that. And actually, at the time, I had the thought that's not a very spiritual name. I just brushed it. I didn't even bother to look anything up. I forgot. I woke up. I just continued my day, and that's part of my pattern. Of how much I can forget, how deeply held we are.
Mm.
And for those of us who are really open, spirit, and at least in my life, comes in very tangibly and sort of drops in very specific ripples. It's got a touch in the physical
Mm.
to say, don't forget. So I met a friend in Crete 2 years down the line after your name was given to me. And he, in fact, Bella's words, bless him, and I'm really grateful for being the bridge for our connection. He said, "You're so much like Lucy." You're really, for some reason, he said, "So much like Lucy. You need to meet Lucy. You two will get on well." That was his word. And so I chatted with Ella, and then I went home and I Googled your name. And it was a day. And again, I heard that little voice, that little whisper. I was home alone. It was the only day in a 2-week holiday that I was on my own. And we get to trust more and more, a drip at a time, that that
Mm.
that happening. And the voice said, Google Lucy, you put here on YouTube. So I sat down typed your name. Well, that's a beautiful name. And I started listening while eating something. And then I had a lot of resonance, first of all, of how our lives have evolved. But the bit that really was like a bullet in my heart was when you were talking about your surrender in your motherhood journey.
Mm.
And that is when I remembered that your name was given to me in my sleep 2 years ago. And then a descent of energy came through me that filled my body in the most blissful, like being in a hot tub.
Mm.
And I felt seen beyond the veil. So it was almost like a bodily devotion
Mm.
to the Greater Mother in that moment.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
And it was,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
this needs to be shared because my longing and hope for this conversation is that people tap into that dimension which is in us,
yeah,
uh, as.
yeah. The great current at the heart of all existence. I
Yes.
love how you say that. God the Mother, you know, Goddess the Mother, and that warm blanket and that wrapping
Mhm.
and that facet of the One that is always holding us, always guiding us, always ushering us
Mhm.
to whatever it is that we so very much need in that moment.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I've had a lot of funny stories like that, you know, and I've experienced it myself, you know, been guided to
Right.
things. And I've had people reach out from all sorts of spots in the world. One said, you appeared to me in the night, and a very sane, normal person, you know, with a PhD.
With a
And
PhD.
I never heard of you, and you said your name, and I could see you with an apparition in my room, and then I'm guided there. So I
Mm,
think it's not about a you or a me.
exactly.
It's really, no one owns light, right? So it's this current that comes through in different ways, in whatever way we need to feel it or see it. And mothering, parenting, fathering, it's such a deep journey.
Yeah.
It's such a deep journey.
Mm.
There's a skinlessness, you know, before I was a parent, people would say, oh, you just don't know until you're a parent. And I would think, yes, you do, you know.
Yeah.
And then when you
Yeah.
become a parent, you're like, yeah, no, I never had a clue. And I hear people now, you know, even in spiritual circles on social media, whatever, who are not parents talking about parenting. And I'm like, oh, no, 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 no.
No, no, no,
You,
no, no.
the skin has to be removed before you really
But
can understand the places it takes you and breaks you
yeah,
open.
and all the time and daily with non-stop. So you've got one beautiful daughter, is that right to say?
That's the one. Yeah. So probably people like you with three go, yep, and you have no idea what it's like. But yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's very subjective though, and I sometimes think having one can be really hard because it's full demand on 24/7 on one child, whereas if you have other children, you
They
know,
play.
they play together. I'm more
Yeah,
like a referee some days than a
yeah.
mom. A whistle is what's missing me. But I too had that thought. I always love children. I think I'm a big grown up child myself. I'm very got this joyful energy, and I always thought it would be like you. It would be, but deep down sometimes I thought I need to feel ready. I need to feel ready before becoming a parent. And my first son, was very soulfully conceived. Actually, that's another lovely story. One day where I was lying in starry Crete, in one of the beaches there, and I felt him reach out, and I had a sobbing moment. And at the time, I was following a spiritual path. Life was my spiritual path, like your path too. And I was doing it on my own, like I know you also did for a long, long time, until spirits calling you in. And one of the ways it called me more consciously, it was through giving me your name. So,
Yeah.
and I wanted to ask you because some people say it's important to be conscious before you become a parent, and a lot of there's this notion around about we become parents because we want to feel fulfilled, which is so true for so many of us. Yeah. So I wondered about if you want to share a bit about your journey of becoming a mother, whether it was a yes, I'm ready moment, or whether it was a oh shit, I'm pregnant moment. Like two of my children were like that. My middle one is the only conscious child. So, so yeah. Would you like?
So did we try for a baby? We actually did, and I left it really late. I left it extremely late compared to many people. So I was 30, 35 when
Like,
I started trying for a baby because I loved living.
like,
I'm not saying it's not living being a
yes,
parent. I'd had such a hard childhood. I'd had such a traumatic, enclosed childhood that felt often like I wasn't free because I grew up in a really rough neighborhood with a single mum. We were very poor. There was a lot of violence in the neighborhood. So there were many layers that made me feel like I wasn't free. One was monetary. We didn't even have a car, so we couldn't go anywhere. We didn't couldn't certainly couldn't go on holidays, or I didn't even have a bicycle until I was 14. Certain things made me feel very hemmed in, very unfree. Now, I didn't know that consciously till later, but because of that, when I was 23, I went traveling. I took myself after university. I went off into the world, to your side of the world, to the UK and Europe
no.
for 10 years. And there was a real sense of freedom in that for me, of
Mm,
ownership of my life and my life force, where I wanted to direct it, what I wanted to do. And I went into humanitarian aid work. So I was doing a lot of work in orphanages and loving and working with children, but I wasn't yet a mother. But I always knew I want to be a mother. It was never in question for me.
mhm.
I really honor and love people that know they don't want to be a parent.
Ah,
I think that's beautiful knowing.
beautiful.
But
Yeah.
I just, for some reason, I just took it for granted that
Mhm.
I would be this amazing mother, that I would get it right, and I would all the things like you do. You kind of, here I was, tending orphans, strangers' children, and people would say to me, "You'll be the most amazing mother." I laugh at that now. I'm like, oh Jesus, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was conscious. So I came home at about
Mm,
33 from my travels, and yeah, married the man I had met in my early 20s, the Irishman, my great love, and married him and settled on a tiny island, and we planned the baby. And
yeah.
actually, I've always had dreams as a deep portal as well. And throughout my life, I've had visitations and dreams. I think they're actually real. Like I put
Yes.
dreams in quote marks. We've just
Yeah.
left our bodies, right? And we're just interacting on a different plane.
Yeah.
And many dreams I've had, I'm actually awake. The body is awake, where I leave the body,
Mhm.
and then the body sleeps while I'm off traveling. So I can see the body on the bed even though I'm dreaming. So I know that I've experienced this. And
Yeah.
anyway, this particular dream, a
Mm.
woman came and spoke right in my face, and she said, "Get ready, a little girl is coming."
Mm.
Um,
Oh,
and it was quite formal the way that it was said. It was quite there.
the-
It was a funny one because there was an element of buckle up, buttercup. This is no joke. It was kind of quite
yeah,
scary. It
seriousness,
wasn't all romantic. It was like,
the
get ready,
sobriety about that.
girl is
Yeah.
coming. There was a sobriety about it. Exactly. And
Yeah.
she also said, and you're about to go back to London, and there's something you need to let go of in London before the child comes. And I won't go into the detail of that, but I woke and I thought, this can't be right. We've just bought a house. We have no money. We've spent it all on the house. There's no way I'm going to London from New Zealand. That's a 30-hour flight, $4,000 or $5,000. I thought that it's just not happening. I went into work and my boss said, we need to send you to Barcelona for a meeting. Well, why don't you take 2 weeks off and go to London? I know you used to live there and you have a lot of friends. You've got so much annual leave you haven't taken. Please take a holiday. Go to London. And I thought, shit, I'm pregnant.
That was the confirmation. Yeah, I love it.
Me too. So, and I was. And to be honest, we had just started trying
Mm.
it was like 3 weeks earlier. So as soon as we said it, yes, and the
Yeah.
child came. And so, yes, it was planned and happened really rapidly. And yet I was 36 by the time she was born.
Yeah. Beautiful story. And I just also want to take a moment to acknowledge that what a blessing that is for us. I've always felt really privileged that I was able to, to conceive. I've had two miscarriages actually in between my first and my second, and very
Wow.
traumatic, but always gifted from spirit again. So I was told you'll have a miscarriage. I was asked to release it with shamanic journey anyway. But it is a privilege that we are this portal, and life is created, and a lot of women are struggling for that. You
Yeah.
know, or some
Yeah.
women, it is said, might want to choose to be motherless, but that doesn't
Yeah.
stop them, in my eyes, being mothers. They could be mothers of children in orphanages, as he says. So the
Right.
concept of motherhood,
Yeah.
we can expand it. What
Yeah.
actually, um,
Yeah, and there are orphans right outside our gate, right? We don't even have to go to Bulgaria or Romania or
yeah,
Africa. You know, there's orphans, there's famine right here. Just walking out,
yeah,
there's so much longing in people's hearts to be loved. And
yeah,
so the mother can appear through us in so many ways and forms if we're open to that channel. It doesn't mean we have to birth
yeah,
with a child, but I love that compassion that we have and that understanding of
yeah,
of privilege
yeah,
it is to be a mother, to know that role and to be, yeah, to be gifted that
yeah,
role for a little while.
yes.
Mm.
Yeah, it was actually me and my husband, Connor, who is also Irish, another parallel in our stories. We were thinking after our first birth to adopt. That was part of the, we sort of entertained the idea at some point.
Mm.
We had the miscarriages, and I think that almost gave us back a kind of grasping of wanting to have our own child because of the grief. And then the third baby, which is she broke me totally open, surrender baby. So after three, no, I can't do that. I'm sorry. I can give in other ways, but I'm just at capacity.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's a key point that you raise about the difference between the beings that come to us as our children.
Yeah.
Because one deep learning I've had, whether we have three, 1, 10,
Hmm.
is that every child is the perfect concoction to
Yeah.
teach us. They are our gurus. They teach
Ah,
us exactly what we need. And when you said the third was your surrender baby, my
yes.
first just cracked me. Oh, she was so, we'll say in quote marks, hard, right? She was, or I was so unprepared. It was probably a combination of both.
Hmm.
But I remember, she wouldn't sleep. She had reflux. We couldn't feed. It was just constant, like every single thing that
Yeah.
could happen. The birth was extremely traumatic, so it set you on a path of exhaustion and la la la. And
Yeah.
so, and that happened to me the first time, and all of the people around me, they were baking, and they had these babies that would sit in the corner of the room and gurgle, and my baby, I couldn't put her down because her throat would burn as the reflux came out. So she was tied to me at all times, so I couldn't shower, I couldn't eat, I couldn't, and it was crazy. And it was a real gift later when those same mothers who would look at me sideways like I was insane, I'd be twitching like a crazy woman because I'd been waking every half an hour,
Yeah.
and I had no support. I had no friends that I'd like deep friendships because I'd been living in London. So I came back to this tiny island at the end of the world off the coast of New Zealand. I had new friendships, but not
Mhm.
what I call bathroom floor friends, the
Yeah.
ones that pick you up off the bathroom
Just
floor
wipe
sobbing.
your snot for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wipe your snot, hold your hair back while you cry. I didn't have, oh, they were all in London
Mm.
still. And so I felt very alone. My husband was at the bank every day working. He was an amazing dad and is an amazing father, but he had to work, and he was in the city and I was on the little island. So there was ocean between us. So it was
Mm.
really me
Hard.
and this baby that didn't sleep. And it was later when some of those same women who looked at me sideways and would say, have you tried swaddling? Have you just tried? And I'd be like, You know, they then had the children later, their second or third or fourth. That was the surrender baby. That
Yeah,
was really, that broke them. And it was then that they came back and said, I'm so sorry. I never understood
that's
what
so
that was
great. They
like.
acknowledge that. That's beautiful. That
Yeah, I
that
think
gift
it's
returned back.
important. Yeah, because so many mothers that we struggle with ourselves and we think, is it me?
Yeah,
Why am I breaking like this? And actually, it's the gift of that child. They come to break us open. And I've come to think of it as a level of light that that particular being carries. It's a level of consciousness, it's a level of light.
I
And
love.
like a poultice, that light wants you to meet it, right? So it's a level of light and it wants you to upgrade in a way to meet it. And so it draws out all your trauma, it breaks you open. So it can draw out anything in you that's incoherent, the fear, the grief, the pain, with that level of light. And in that process, your body releases all the trauma, you break open, you break down, you're also just totally worn down and worn out by it. So there's a softening that happens in the system where you can open because you're so exhausted that you
Yeah,
can't
you
fight
have no energy to fight
you
it.
can't
Yeah.
fight anymore. And all your trauma floods the system and you work through it. So I had a couple of years of just deep darkness. And actually that was everything from that childhood that was locked in my body, releasing because it was incoherent with that level of light. Anything that wasn't freedom, that wasn't love, needed to release. But we're flooded with it before it releases. So we experience the grief, the pain, the rage of motherhood,
Oh, felt
um,
that last year. Yeah.
suddenly being in service to this other being
Mm,
completely and utterly,
mm.
can trigger every single part of us that says, no,
Yes.
no, no, I am sovereign. I am free. You will not have my life. And this is the surrender, baby. It means you have to get to this place. You're forced.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much beauty in what you're sharing. I sort of feel like I want to pause and savor it and sip it bit by bit, what you're sharing, because there's so many parents out there and society does that, sort of pathologizes that breakdown.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And there is a real value in that. There is a real need to acknowledge the density of light. I love that expression, that postnatally or prenatally we go through, um, and have the right support around us. When I was pregnant with my second baby, which was another surrender, because surrender has been the path for me, and I know it's been a big, big, big part of your journey too. And motherhood compels you, as you said, to surrender. I was pregnant and I was suicidal, so that was the first surrender.
Oh,
And during those dark times, but I was on the path of awakening. So the awakening, the Big Bang, let's call it in my story, happened in 2019. And the dissolution has been organic since then, the embodiment of that. So when that suicide ideation was coming through, I had that voice again, which was the voice in my childhood, the same voice, that timeless mother
mm,
that whispered in my ear one morning, "You're clearing from the inside out. Simply trust."
mm,
And it was only when I was interviewed in a podcast about my awakening experience that I realized that actually, yeah, I was gifted creation. Literally, I was gifted creation in
mm,
the physical human, but
mm,
I gifted another depth,
mm,
just
mm,
another layer of creation.
mm,
And it was a surrender, but having said that, I did take the steps that I needed, right? So I was under the perinatal and mental health team at the time who reached out, and and of course we need to do that too, because hormones can become huge on this journey, and this is how we can embody both, what we call both the human and the immanent and the transcendent
mm,
aspect of
mm,
ourselves.
mm, mm. Absolutely.
that whisper never leaves. And parents who may be hearing us might have glimpsed into those whispers of grace, the whispers of the Great Mother in different ways. What message, I'm looking at my questions, what message would you like to offer parents who might be struggling, with that postnatal depression they may be going through, that they're cracking open? What support in those moments? Because I am a massive fighter, so my control is burst. Despite that, this human still wants to do that. And it's like, it's a paradox, isn't it? The more we let go, the more we soften and we reverent our underbelly. It's here, so here, so available. We fight. What would you like to tell them? Which I know it's really difficult, like an advice from the outside, right? But
Yeah,
from your
it's so
heart.
tricky, isn't it? It's so tricky because when you're in that, it's actually sacred process,
Yes.
right? So I love that you highlighted that we often pathologize it as if that state of breaking down or composting, right? We compost so that we may bloom. Yeah, or the seed breaks open like that so it can crack and it can bloom eventually. And that's a sacred process. We don't make nature wrong for that. Oh, the seed is cracking, it's opening. Look how messy it is.
Yeah.
We don't do that. Like,
Yeah.
yet with ourselves,
Mm.
if it feels unpleasant, we make it bad. We
Mm.
say unpleasant equals bad.
Yeah.
Grief, rage, despair, desperation equals bad. And we obviously we do that because we want to feel good, right? So
Mm.
we want to skip over the crucifixion
Yeah.
as fast as we can
Mm.
and get to the resurrection, the blooming. And actually, if we can look at it as just a process,
Yeah.
the sacred breaking down that's going to happen, the death and the rebirth over and over, and that's holding it lightly with a kind of lens that's a drone's eye view or a God's eye view that says, okay, this hurts, this fucking hurts. Whether that's our first child or our third, wherever we're at, whether it's our first rodeo or our last, this is nature's way.
Yeah.
And the more that we're in that place of making ourselves wrong, bad, and broken, I need to be fixed. I need to change. I need to stop. We add this other layer of suffering, right? The suffering of, I'm terrible. I have to hide this. There's shame. There's grief. Actually, everyone's in the same basket when we're becoming. So
Yeah.
if we're in that dark place, and I was in it for 2.5 years, and I don't say this from a lofty height. I did not have a vanilla life, right? I grew up seeing the worst of humanity, violence and rape and all sorts of things, not me, but in my neighborhood. I went then on to work with humanitarian aid in some of the poorest countries in the world, seeing, the tyranny of humanity and the best in humanity. So there's no vanilla kind of blinkers on me. And yet motherhood, of all things, broke me the most. It was so excruciatingly hard. It was so all in. There was no clocking off. Even if I did 70-hour weeks as an aid worker, I could clock off if I needed to and sleep. There's nothing like that with motherhood. So you are so broken down, and so when you're in that
Purpose.
with that purpose, and it's that love that calls us to stretch. We meet our edge over and over and over, and the only thing that calls us past it over and over and over is, I love you so much, I have to grow. I have to become more than what I am so that I can serve you. Otherwise, I'm going to leave. When my child was 3 months old, I was so in that dark place that I said, I'm going to have to kill myself. And I'd never been that person. My whole life, no matter what had come to me, illness where I was bedridden for a long time, I had to learn to walk again, growing up in the hood, all sorts of things. They had never broken me to that place. Motherhood did. And I said, I'm going to have to kill myself because I cannot live like this. I cannot do
Yeah.
this. I hadn't slept. I couldn't,
Mm.
and and I had this moment where I said, actually, I'm going to stay alive for her. Otherwise, she'll have no mum.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be the walking dead. I'm just going to say, okay, I'm dead, but I'll stay in my body for her. So she has arms, breasts, but I'm dead on the inside. So it was bad. It was really, really bad. And what I'll say is, I am so grateful
Mm.
and that I didn't numb that off,
Yeah.
that I didn't follow advice and take it. It wasn't, I somehow escaped it being
Yeah.
diagnosed as a something. Now, I'm not saying it's bad if it is,
Yeah, sure.
if you've been diagnosed with postnatal depression and you're on medication, or that's your journey and that's absolutely okay and that's right for you, you know it. For me, it was this sacred process that had I numbed it off would have only prolonged it. And so the place to go there, but I'm not sure I would have listened if someone had told me, but the place to go there is to open and surrender as much as you can.
Mm.
So it's like a straw, right? If we clench the straw, the air can't get
Yeah.
through. So light can't get through, grace can't get through when we're so. But I also say that with the full knowing that if you're battling, then the battle is also part of it. Because just like a butterfly before it gets its wings struggles and there's tension, that is actually part of the process. So you will implode when you're ready.
Mm.
But maybe the trick is bringing that eye of compassion to ourselves,
Yeah.
not making ourselves wrong for
That's it.
wherever we are in that process. We don't rip a caterpillar out of the cocoon and say, why aren't you a butterfly yet?
Yeah.
And punish it, right?
Mm.
It would die.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yes.
saying, okay, this is where I am.
Mm.
Let me find other people who are here like this podcast, right? We have walked that holy war. We get that journey to the underworld. Like that for me, there was no light for 2 years, none. And so it really is a journey to the underworld, but we get our gifts there, like Ainana's descent. But we get our gifts in that place. But I don't know that there's any words of comfort. I don't know that
Yes.
there's because you're on you really on your own. It's initiation by exile in that place. And it's a
Beautiful.
gift, but often we see that later.
Yeah.
I actually had I will share this one thing, because it might be of comfort. I had a moment where I was crumpled on clean laundry at midnight, a pile of clean laundry that I needed to fold and blah, 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 the drill. And I was exhausted and I was suicidal. And it sounds silly being suicidal because a child won't sleep or laundry isn't.
Gosh,
It's not
no, it
about
doesn't.
any one thing, right? It's not about any one thing. It's about the system being completely repressed again in service to this other being, this kind of this terrifying obligation,
Mm.
this suffocating obligation to
Shape.
another
That's it.
being.
Mm.
Yeah, and the panic that can come with that. I'm not
Yeah.
free.
Yeah.
I will never be free again. Yeah, it's like a gravity, right? And that the trauma from your childhood that brings up and
Mm.
blah
Mm.
blah blah. So I was crumpled on this laundry and I was begging, why are you doing this to me? I can't do this. Please help me, please help me. And the light had pretty much left me. I stopped having the hearing, I stopped seeing, but in that moment my guides showed me walking up a mountain, every muscle, every sinew flinching, and how hard that was
Mm.
at this journey. And they showed themselves walking beside me.
Mm.
They were putting an umbrella over my head to protect from the sun. They offered water and they could hold my bag, but they could not carry me up the mountain.
Mm.
So when I was saying, why won't you help me? They were saying, we're beside you every step,
Yeah.
but we can't carry you. And that made me angry, actually. And later in life,
Mm.
I remembered that vision
Mm.
with a gasp. I thought, oh my God,
Mm.
if the version of me now could stand beside that woman crumpled in her laundry,
Yeah.
and those guides came in near her, I would say, don't you touch her. Stand back. I, the version of Lucy now, would look at that version and say, leave her alone. She
She's,
needs this journey.
yeah.
She is becoming.
Yeah.
Don't take that gift from her. Don't
Yeah.
you dare carry her up the mountain. So, in a way, although
Beautiful.
the personality rallies and riles, and I don't want this,
Mm.
actually, on a deeper level, it's exactly
Mm.
what we want and need.
And we know that. And I think we really do know that on a soul level. I mean, I've always been very, um, a bit of a fighter, a bit of a warrior with my legacy of my ancestors from Crete. And don't take advice. Like, don't dare give me advice. I've got that really fighter in me. But I think all of us, humanity, and specifically mothers, we expand our vaginas to 10 centimeters and our bellies tear open if people have C-sections to bring this child to life. And it fills me with rage that society has conditioned women to feel powerless in this journey when we're doing so much. So rage has been my deep initiation this past year, and it's been my wildest one. I'd like to touch on rage as well at some point.
Thank you. That's a really important piece. The rage of
Shall we
motherhood.
go in there now? Because the shame and the rage is the big pillars in motherhood that actually initiated me into creating this community, the fighter, and I know I can do that for people. But because I felt at that broken place, similarly like you describe, and everything wrong, feeling wronged, and carrying ancestral messages passed down. So my clearing was when I would erupt in rage. And I am neurodivergent, and I think it is important. I would highlight that. I don't know what your perspective is on that. Neurodivergent brains, by their brain wiring, they're like open portals, and a lot of people who are on a spiritual journey, they get even more sensitized nervous systems.
Absolutely.
So I was actually diagnosed after my awakening experience, which is interesting. Synchronicity,
Mm-hmm.
because it does break you up. And when this rage was erupting, and then sometimes I would take it out on people, and I would take it out on family because it's incredibly hard to maintain, and people who haven't experienced that. And I want to really normalize it. I want to
Yeah.
really envelop it with this warmth and love and trust, radical trust. It's a
Mm-hmm.
potent medicine.
Mm-hmm.
I would feel it like fire burning in my body, right? Like fire rising up. And I would go to this pile of dishes, what I would want to fight, and I would lean in and I would ask, show me what now? And I was taken back to grandmother's houses as visions. And I could see them standing in front of the sinks, washing dishes, silently crying,
Right.
not speaking. So it was just so clear the catharsis that our rage is like a filtering of old stuff. Don't
Mm-hmm.
go only back to our childhood, I feel, but they go before generations before me. So the women
Absolutely.
for me, the matriarchs that had to carry all of the weight.
That's right.
So, and to sit with that, to really trust it and not go into shame, it's taken a lot of
Yeah.
trial and error and persistence to really be with it.
Yeah.
Knit it, keep knitting.
Yes.
That's where my
Yes.
poetry came. That the last year that just exploded me into.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah. Because
medicine you talk about
yeah, and rage is a fuel.
as a fuel.
It's a, it's an energy.
Yeah.
that can really propel us forward. It's creative fuel, it's life force, rage. So often in spiritual communities, we wrong make anger or rage, which is ridiculous, right? Actually, the
The
dark
mother,
mother,
yes.
she never does that. God, the mother, is about immanence, not transcendence, right? Now, transcendence isn't bad, but it is the way that patriarchal or masculine spirituality
Yeah.
has led, and it's not whole. This transcendence is part of our true nature. We are human, we are more than human, so that transcendent place is absolutely part of the whole.
Mm.
And
Mm.
there's the mother, the feminine current, whatever you want to call that, is about immanence. It's in the mud, it's in the cells. Every cell in the body of God is part of wholeness. Wombs anoint everything, the womb of the mother,
Yeah.
right? She
I
looks
love the
you right
energy.
in the eye. Yeah.
Yeah.
She looks you right in the eye and she says, I'm here for it. What is this? It's not about rage being bad or wrong, but there's been so much conditioning
Mm.
by a society that has been controlled by men who traditionally have not been in service like women have. They've had a lot more freedom to pursue their careers, their creativity. If they want to be Albert Einstein in his workshop all day, or a professor in his lovely, I'm a writer. I spend hours upon hours contemplating and thinking. If I had been born 100 years ago as a woman, I wouldn't have had those freedoms. It's very likely I would
We
have had to
wouldn't
be
be alive.
creative.
We've been
Clearly,
burnt. We've been
yeah.
burnt.
And
Yeah.
so we made space for the men to do that. And so there's so much rage for that woman, that grandmother was stuck wiping a bench.
Yeah.
And so this rage or anger isn't bad, but repressed
Rest.
rage or anger is. And spirituality makes it bad, which is bullshit.
Mm.
Actually, it's a fuel for change. It's a fuel for poetry, for music, for creativity. And what I found that first 2.5 years, I was flooded with rage. I mean,
Mm.
I had been an aid worker, the most loving, I was powerful.
Yeah.
When I say
Yeah.
loving, it's not a saccharine, fluffy thing. I had a steel spine. You can't get out of
Yes.
the hood without that. I was very strong,
Uh,
powerful, grounded love.
mm.
But I was compassionate, kind of had never expressed my rage. And
Mm.
she came, my child, and broke that open in me. I was punching walls. I would put myself in the car and scream.
Yeah.
The rage that flooded my body, I suddenly realized it's like your eyes are open. Because I've never wanted to be one of those women, that criticize the patriarchy or bang on about all that stuff. I just wasn't interested in that. I had real judgments about those kind of feminists, and those are my own judgments because once I had a child, once I was imprisoned within the culture of motherhood,
Yeah.
I realized the deep grief and rage that has been running through us for good reason. I remember throwing my phone, on a wall and it's smashing my cell phone because I was so angry. I screamed at my husband one day. He was walking really slow to get a bottle. I was trying so hard to breastfeed and it
Mm.
just wasn't working. And he went, I'll get a bottle of formula. And I didn't want that. I wanted to feed her because I'd been conditioned with, you must. And he was
Mm.
walking so slow. I screamed at him. I
Mm.
said, you're a cunt, like this. And he turned around. The poor guy, like, it wasn't even that he was walking slow. I just felt like he was. Because the rage that builds in us.
Developing.
And
Yeah.
this is before these big kind of openings in me that happened. And
Mm.
later, after my system was flooded with this rage and shame, afterwards I said, I'm so
Shame. Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Can't believe I said that to you. Like, that's probably the worst moment. I
Yes.
said, I don't understand why I did that. It's like my body was overtaken.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Later, about 3 years later, and I was deep in this, I had blown open.
Mhm.
The surrender had taken me into this implosion, you can call it. That was my soul initiation. But this awakening, and I'd had one at 21, but this one in 2018 was huge. It was
Ah,
completely
2019
dismantled.
as well. Wow.
2018, yeah,
Mm.
2018, it completely dismantled me. And I was in pieces, and then another in 2020 that went through the
Yes.
heart, and just these
Wow.
complete openings. And after that, I actually, for
Mm.
a period, could ask a question and get really clear answers. And I asked, why so much anger? I said, why so much anger?
Mhm.
And they said it's a fuel. You actually needed that energy, that fuel, that red energy, that alive energy to propel the awakening. It
Yeah.
was gathering in you
Circuit.
to open. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So it's also it's transmuting for the ancestral line. It's a lot of different things that all sound cliched until you live it.
Until you
And
live
when
it.
you live it, yeah, when you live
And I
it, it's
guess
really
that's what we're doing here. We're really normalizing it and saying, and as you said, it's not rage that we take out on people, although I have
no,
fallen, I have failed plentiful in terms of that, the ability to contain, but I'm very super aware of my context too, the sensitivities of my neurodivergence. I have three really fighty, fiery children. Like so the grinding is really true and real, and my journey is to, for me at least, to keep finding that fine-tuned clarity in the moment, to put the boundaries. My journey is about placing the boundaries, um, but also the surrendering, the heart opening, that becoming the eye of the storm in the middle of
yeah,
explosion.
yeah.
Neurodivergent children, because we're on the pathway now with my eldest, and that's okay to share. And that means explosive outbursts every day
Wow. Yeah.
from just one of them.
So
And
you're
he's the most
refining
psychic.
patience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the patience and the eye of the storm and the calling to really tune in. But children have this capacity, and I don't know if you're finding this. I'm really fascinated about how the depth of light, the density of light that is not owned by people, it's not owned by anybody. But when we clear the channel, which is our body, our mind, how that then transfers down to our children. So my child, I mean, my eldest one has predicted that I was pregnant 2 eyes before I even knew it. So we can see the gifts traveling down, the psychic skills, the intuitive wisdom. And I have such deep longing to bring these generations with this, we can call that spiritual heritage, although I don't use the word spiritual anymore because everything is sacred and spiritual. But they can be anchored in the universal heart. And as I'm
Mm.
saying, I'm getting my answer, which is I don't have to try. They are it already.
It's unfolding.
And
Yeah.
I just need to get out of the way. But I wonder if you use any creative ways or poetry even to spark that a little
I
bit appropriately,
I actually think we can nurture it. I think they are unfolding, yes, but obviously, like with all of us, the grace is the doer, yes, and all those things, and the child has the seed of that oak tree in them,
Mhm.
right? But like everything, if it's repressed or shunned, the
Yeah.
child, they take their messages from us, right, about what is right and good. They've landed on Mars, and we are their guides on Mars until they're old enough that every single thing they look to us, as a mother, that innocent face turning to you and saying, am I good, mama? Am
Mhm.
I good?
Mhm.
They look for us to mirror their goodness, and so if my child, and she does, she has a lot of psychic
Mhm.
moments and
Yeah.
and questions, and
Mm.
she's an insane, sensitive, open channel. She finds noise hard. She's always doing this since she was 1 year old.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and because our world is not made for innocence.
Yeah.
It's not made for love. Our culture is fast and furious, We're, given messages about how to button up and get on
Yeah.
from early on. And actually, if we don't create space
Mhm.
to listen, we
Yes.
all know this place where we shut our channel down for years because we're moving so fast. We're achieving at university, we're achieving in our jobs, we're buying the house, blah, 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 we're accumulating the roles, we're da 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 da. So I think that we can create space in their lives. Less is more, to give them quiet,
Mhm.
to give them, to facilitate, they won't realize consciously, and also approval. So
Mhm.
when she comes to me, she says things like, Mama, I had a dream, that I was at the cinema and a big snake bit me. And so I will say dreams are very important, sweetheart. So we're giving implicit
Absolutely.
approval. So what do you make of that? I don't give her my take. What do you make of that? She said, I think I've been watching a bit too much TV. And I thought, oh my God.
Brilliant.
I've
That's
actually asked for
beautiful.
guidance through her many times. I speak to her soul. So I go soul to soul with her. So I
Uh-huh.
just say, I'd like to speak with Rose's soul. My daughter's called Rose.
Mm.
And I just say, please
Beautiful.
guide me on what's best for you on this thing. And often it will come through her mouth. So when I first divorced, I had my daughter 5 days a week, and her daddy had her 2 days a week for about a year. Um, and I started getting messages that she needs to go to her father more.
Mm.
And I said, no, no. Like, I was like, when I had this huge awakenings, I was willing to lose everything. I was told I need to leave my marriage.
But
I did.
not
I had,
wrong.
yeah, had to leave my home. I had to leave my career of 15 years that I was at the height of and leading huge teams and I love. And I said yes to all of that easily. And I said yes, 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 yes.
Mm.
Huge pillars of my life. Scary. It took a lot of
Yeah.
courage.
Yeah.
But when it came to Rose, there was a no. No, please, not her.
Just felt
I,
that.
yeah, I was just, please, I will just not her.
Mm.
And it was clear, and the messages were clear, the dreams were clear. I kept asking, please show me for sure, because I don't want to mess this up. How can I be a good mother and release my daughter every second week, 50-50? Her father started asking for that. I want 50-50 at the same time that I was getting that message. It was clear. I
Mm.
had a profound dream where when I asked for help, I said, please show me the right action. A
Mhm.
profound dream where I was walking through a house and she was with this other family and she was so happy. And I kept walking and I went through a door and there were 8 other babies that I had to mother. So this idea of mothering other things, I took the 8 babies
Yes.
and I
Symbolic.
grew them. And
Mm.
those babies were my teaching work and my book and my different things like contribution, and so, but the last pillar in that is another way we can nurture our children is actually open to guidance coming through them for us because they are our gurus. So even after all of that, I said no. I said I still can't give her,
So
and I said you. I
difficult.
literally said you have to bring it through her mouth. You have to have her ask
I
her.
love that.
Yeah. So
I love that. That's
I
something
talked to
I
her
would say.
soul.
Prove to me. Just
Show
show me
me
that this is really what's happening here. Yeah.
I need it this way. So we ate dinner one night and she suddenly looked up. About 2 days after that prayer, please, I talked to her soul. If this is what is best for your development on your soul journey,
Mm-hmm.
I'll do it. Only if it's best for you.
Yeah.
Show me. I need you to tell me out of your own mouth. And so we're at dinner. She looked up. She hadn't heard me talking about it. I never talked about it in front of her. She said, Mama, she was really young, 6.
Mm-hmm.
Um, could we make it that I go to daddy's this much? And she held her hands apart. And I stay at yours this much. And she held her hands apart the same amount. And I said, could you draw it, sweetheart? And
You
she
wanted
drew it.
the visual as well.
Yeah, the same amount. And I said, so the same amount at daddy's. And
Amazing.
then I said, okay, I release her. So they are these channels. They can guide us if we listen. I'm not going to let them eat sweets for dinner, right? But there is deep wisdom in children because there's not the conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
There's not the gap between them and spirit. The ego calcifies over time, and you watch it come in as
Yeah.
they get older. Rose is 8 now, and she's starting to get a bit of swagger.
Yeah.
She's like,
Yeah. Gosh, we've
whatever, mum.
had that.
Like the ego calcifies, and it's an amazing thing to watch. And you get quite excited because they have to gain that to then crack through it later. But
Yeah.
but at this point when they're young, and
Mm.
we can implicitly make it okay. It's okay that you knew that person was going to ring you today.
Mm.
She'll say, Granny's going to call today. And sure enough, Granny does, and great, darling. She often says, Mummy, I see lights in the room.
Beautiful.
And
Yeah.
I say, yeah, those are orbs. Yeah, that's real. And she says, Daddy says it's not real. And I say, it is real. So we
Yeah.
can
Mm-hmm.
we can really confirm their deepest knowing. Then we have to release them to the world.
Yeah.
But we can guide them and usher them into their own deepest knowing, their own voice, and
Mm.
hope that we get that place of trust
Mm.
anchored in them. You
Mm.
know, we
Mm.
can talk about angels,
Yeah.
not in a frou-frou, woo-woo way, but in a really solid way.
Mm. Mm.
That you're always supported, darling.
Yeah.
You know the answers. Listen to your voice.
Mm-hmm.
What does your heart say? She asks Mama a lot, like, Mummy, what should I? And I say, what do you think? What
Yeah.
does your voice say? So
Yeah.
pointing them inward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is such a beautiful practice. I think I'm going to start doing that, speaking to the soul of, that's something that I haven't done. And I'm definitely receiving that really graciously. And one of the ways that I've integrated that with my eldest is I remember when he was in school refusal and during COVID, it was a really difficult time. He would ask questions about death and he was tuning into the wider field, right? But also, I was suicidal at the time. So, this is how consciousness can really stream down to our children and they become the echo chamber, as you said. Um, and I remember one morning a heron flew. So, I would use nature as a guide quite often. And I said to him, what would a heron say at this stage? I said, look, I think he came here to offer support. And I just saw his face just soften in that moment. Like his soul really truly believed it. And next time he had another difficult morning again, the heron was there again. And it's just a beautiful way to have that confirmation. But as you said, it's so important to
I
leave them
love that.
inwards
I
and not
love
get in the way
that.
at all.
Your wisdom is so deep with that. I love that. I'm going to take that on and use that. That's because the
Nature.
example is the teaching is in what you did then, what you said.
Yeah.
It's not about teaching, but
No,
you showed him that
I
you
pointed.
valued symbology. I value the heron. So if Mama values the symbology of nature, then there must be value in it for me too.
Mm.
So what I give my attention to, I'm
Uh,
teaching you that is valuable. So you open him to that. What a gift. And there's a reason he chose you, right? For his mama.
yes, and like Rose choosing you, but I think all our children choosing us for that same reason. And that's why I'm really passionate that parents really cultivate that wisdom. We have to start from ourselves, as we know, don't we? To pass it down to the children. And I'm so ferociously passionate about this, especially in an era. And I only found out yesterday about the screen addiction, right? Screens. It's my biggest fear, going. And I am pulled into the vortex myself. Sometimes I just feel like I want to throw it all away and just go and live in a cave somewhere with my fire and my friends and just not that fast-paced world. And I heard yesterday that screen gives it's so addictive, more than cocaine. And it's like an invisible syringe that we're all holding. And the dopamine that it gives is stronger physiologically, when you put a post out and you're waiting for the likes and the children
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
stronger in dopamine measures than the runner's dopamine that he gets after a marathon.
Wow.
And it's becoming for girls, and that interestingly really freaked me out. My little one is very little, only 18 months, but it's become the second cause of death in girls by suicide. It's
Why?
Search is
Wow.
associated with the identity wrapping up. So this is how consciousness is moving in its journey. The way I feel it is in its journey to expand and have all eyes on one through the suffering and people awakening up to that. That then becomes another layer. It can become, if we choose it, another layer of the ego identity to shed, or finding that fierce boundary to say, to discern, actually, no,
Yeah.
our
So you mean, do
face.
you mean that addictive nature of screens becomes the number one cause of suicide?
It's
I'm
associated, yeah,
lost.
yeah.
It's
There is,
associated.
yeah, the research shown, and I can put the research in the video link, that there's an association between the suicide rate in teen girls with the usage of screen and social media.
Oh, social media. Yeah, yeah,
Scary.
yeah, yeah,
Social media
yeah.
groupings, all this
Oh, I
gaming,
bet.
all of that we're all faced with.
Yeah, yeah.
So how to, and then we are very low pressure family too. We're like very low, zero demand. We just spend weekends just, sometimes I wonder, I feel like an alien family. Sometimes I really,
Mm,
am I missing to provide them more learning opportunities, because that's the vortex of the wider society. We love being at home, having the fire, we dance a lot, we put music on, I have to somehow to engage my children's life force, because otherwise there's conflict all the time. So it's like this life force is needing channeling all the time somewhere, and they
yeah,
have
yeah,
in their activities. So what are the ways that you would encourage that slow pace for families?
yeah, yeah. I love that,
So
Maria. I
important.
love that.
So
It's so important. Interestingly, because I was so poor, in quote marks, relatively, I often call it my welfare child ashram as it when I was a child. Because
important.
we often parent the way we were parented, right? And my childhood had so much space
Mm.
out of necessity because we didn't have money for ballet lessons. I can actually remember being a little girl standing at a window in the city looking at a ballet dress, longing. I really had my hands up like that on the
Oh,
glass.
so you just then, I feel I just see
Yeah, I
you.
can remember it. Yeah, saying, please, can I do that? This pretty dress,
Mhm.
and mum saying we don't have money. I mean, we often didn't have food, so let alone dresses like that. New things were a no-no. But what a gift in the end, because
Yes. Yeah.
the space that I had to just be, right? Because there's being and doing.
Mhm.
And if we get pulled into the vortex of constantly doing, we're
Mm.
taking the child out of
Mhm.
their inner world into the external world.
Yeah.
And we're actually training that system
Yeah.
to constantly go out, whether that's a screen,
Mm.
whether that's ballet, then music, then this, then school, then we're taking their to orient their consciousness outside of them and gratification out there
Yeah.
and approval out there and
Radical
achieving out
stuff.
there,
I love it. Yeah.
all those things, right? And so actually creating slowness and space. Where
Mm.
do I go when there's nothing? I go inward. So as a child, that was the greatest gift.
Yeah.
I would sit under a tree.
Mm.
I would read. I would think.
Yeah.
I would wonder about life. And so creating that space, I actually think is being really
Necessary.
boundaried. Less is more, really boundaried with, okay, does my child really need, is this decision coming from fear
Mm.
or is it coming from love?
So,
Does my child really need ballet and piano? Or
yes.
is that me being
Mine.
fearful?
Or
Yeah.
mine, coming from my need, because I'll get the approval from XYZ society, or because I didn't have it as a child, or because I feel that's what will make me look like a good mom. Um, and I confess this sometimes out of exhaustion, and I'm really connecting with that surrender. That actually, it's partly exhaustion. Just me and
Oh
Connor were
God, I give
so
Rosie TV. I give her TV every day. every
Yeah,
single day.
absolutely. Because we've got
Because
at the
I just,
same time to balance that, don't we? So that they don't feel very excluded from what's happening societally. But I want to give you a six. I'm sure this child is going to be writing books and channeling all sorts of beautiful wisdom. And all my children, really, they're beautiful in their own unique ways. And he said to me, he cannot stand the feeling of boredom. He's so creative, incredibly insightful. But he gets so perplexed with the speed of his brain. And that's the energy that leads to explosions. And I'm trying to really normalize the feeling of boredom.
mm,
So I said, let's just pause here. I said one day, let's just define how does that feel in your body? How does boredom feel in your body?
mm,
He said, oh, ma'am, it's like having so many ideas of what to do and they're stuck in the back of my head and I can't get them out. And that's what boredom is for him. All of these stuck ideas of what to do next because he's so high on life force that he wants to do everything at once, and it's crashing in the front of his head, and he makes me feel bored because he cannot find that thread. And I thought, what a beautiful way to define boredom.
beautiful, so beautiful. And then it helps you understand, oh, he needs an outlet.
An
I
outlet
can
and some help to actually
get
say
some help. Yeah.
options. These are the options that we can have to play.
Yeah, amazing. I love that. What a beautiful approach. Because in that case, we wouldn't want to just create space and send them off. Like for me, if
Yeah.
my mum could just create space, send me off, I liked to be on my own. But if that's happening inside your being, it's going to be overwhelming, right? And so you need the options, you need a little bit of support and scaffolding to get to channel it.
And where do we channel it with our children? Because that brings me then to community. As you said, I was raised by the village. So it's like I was half of the day I was gone. It was just my mom didn't know where I was. My aunties just played and played endlessly. And my children don't have that here in the UK. So I have felt and
Yeah,
so many times, we're creating little communities here and I make sure that I create this where I am, but it's not the same.
yeah.
Well, based on your intuition, looking forward in time, what vision have you got about mothers and fathers and parents and communities? What kind of community is it needed to
Yeah.
hold parents in this sacred role in raising children in these turbulent times?
Mm, mm. I really see us returning to the village.
Yeah,
I really see us returning to simplicity
yeah,
and to stripping away. Now, I think as souls, we choose the point in time, space, reality that we enter for a specific reason.
yeah,
So if we want the crucible of parenting in this kind of segmented way that we do it now, where we're in a home by ourselves often living internationally without our parents, our aunts, our grandparents, completely unsupported, our sisters. I
it's
think we choose
unsustainable.
it's unsustainable. I think we choose that for a reason because I think it's a deep soul initiation, which you and I have covered in this interview.
Mm,
So I'm not wrong making that. It's a point in time, space, reality where we're doing this thing,
yeah,
where many of us in the Western world are completely isolated, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. I don't need to tell that story because we talk about it all the
we
time of
feel it.
how once you become a parent, you are shocked,
Mm,
deeply shocked at the lack of community, the lack of support, the individualism of our society shocks you because
yeah.
it is not sustainable. So I won't go down that path because you and I know that. I think most listeners will know that story, will know that yarn because they're living it.
Mhm.
So where I see us going is, who was it? Was it T.S. Eliot that said true growth and learning is starting at a point, going all the way around, away from it, all the way back again, only to know it and its value for the first time. It's only been the last few hundred years that we live like this, right? It was during the Industrial Revolution that
Mhm.
men needed working class women in the factories to work and told women to start leaving their babies alone to cry in the pushchair outside the factory, because it was like, I need you to work in my factory. I'm going to tell a new story about what's good for your child. It's not closeness, it's not breastfeeding, it's not wrapping the child like we've done for thousands and thousands of years in huts and villages where we wrap the child to our body and we work the field or we do the thing. No, I want you to leave your child on its own outside. So then we have brain disorders, anxiety disorders, depression with unregulated nervous systems created in children and who become adults, all the issues that come with that. It's only in the last few hundred years, the isolation of the family unit, all the things. So I see us recognizing that deeply and coming into a place where we open our doors and our hearts more widely to one another. We start stripping away the toxic messages of culture that say you and your husband should both be in work 50-hour weeks, 40-hour weeks, so that you can buy a fancy washing machine and a four-wheel drive Jeep and go to Fiji once a year, right?
Yeah.
Because that lens is only economic. It's only economic, and it serves the shareholders and companies lining their pockets. It does not serve well-being. It is not a well-being lens. It does not serve our children developing and growing. We have the most anxious, I mean, you're a psychotherapist, I'm a therapist, anxious, over-medicated society ever. And Big Pharma, Big Pharma wants that. And not to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but it is all wrapped up in that.
True. That's
That's
the colonial framework on mental health that you're providing in many ways. I 100% agree.
Yeah. So we want people medicated. We want people in the office completely worked to the bone, isolated, which means the children are in care. Now, balance is okay, right? I work myself. I'm a working mother.
Yes.
I always have been since she was 1 year old.
Yeah.
You know, but I worked a couple of days a week and I da. So there's balance that we need, and we can't do it if we're not supported in the village. So I think there'll be a stripping away. I think there'll be a rising up, fueled by some rage and some, a sense of it's not me that's toxic. Because many mothers that I work with, or fathers, feel guilt and shame. They actually think, oh, but I must be wrong or weak or broken if I can't work 5 days a week and run a home and be an amazing parent. And I say to them, it's not you that's toxic for needing space. It's culture that's toxic. So when we start saying no, so now I live in nature. I live on an island that doesn't have a traffic light. I've made choices. I live in a 50 square meter tiny home. So I make choices that mean that I can work less because I see what's valuable. I can be more in my community. I can support and be supported, because half of that's about opening our hearts, allowing support in. And in a big city like London, or it can get harder, Manchester, there's so much in this. But a big part of it is giving myself deep permission to be held and to hold, right? So opening the gates of my heart and my home. So what choices am I making? What are available to me? How do I be the change I want to see? So if I need community, how am I keeping myself separate from community? Because it is there for me if I step into that place. Am I afraid that I won't have the fancy washing machine? That's reducing it a bit, but it's a thing. It's a thing.
It's such a big thing, and the grief goes really deep in our veins and in our bodies when we start awakening to that reality of how we've kept separate from each other. And if we don't wake up enough, I feel grace will force us to wake up to it.
It'll force us with a breakdown, right?
With
It'll
a breakdown, with war, with it's happening already, and people are. I am really ferocious optimist about where we are in this planet at this time. And I had visions. I was gifted visions since I was 5 and 6 that part of the message, which I don't want to share all of it, not necessarily at the moment, is that we will be living special shifts in human consciousness.
Absolutely.
We are. And so when my heart trembles, I sort of return to that trust. which we can
Yes.
so quickly forget. So how
Yeah.
can we cultivate the space? How can people cultivate the space? And it's that movement that you so beautifully articulated, away from the I and into the we, away from
Absolutely.
little me and into the vast universe.
Yeah, and cultivating that trust through what we spoke about earlier. We spoke about the individual initiation to awakening, to opening, to deepening, to expanding, to emergence, right?
Urgent.
We talked about sacred process. We can use that old cliche of the caterpillar becoming a butterfly, right? Or the seed becoming an oak tree, whatever you want to use. It is sacred process on the micro level, the human individual level,
Mm,
also on the macro. So this emergence is happening on the macro. So if we make any point in that journey wrong, we
mm,
miss the point. So right now we have just entered a time-space reality right now, but it's an emergence on the macro too. So we are shifting and it is moving and it's part of sacred process, but it needs its own composting,
mhm.
right? Before it can.
Places
So
to
what is
compost. Mm,
yeah, what is my role? Yeah, if this is my time space reality, what is my unique contribution? And we don't have to save the world today. Oftentimes, if we're parents,
mm,
that is our sacred journey, and we just have to breathe,
mm,
breathe,
mm.
feel, be present,
Yeah.
notice the beauty of parenting and the gift we give when we're really there, and then open to receive what might, if there's another role for me to play in this emergence of the collective, what
Mm,
might it be?
mhm.
And opening to hear that. And that will come. If it's our time, it will come. Grace will rise to meet us there. Show me,
Yeah.
show me. And then being that in the world. Because we can sit and critique culture, look at how it's broken, how it's messy,
Mm,
or we can come into our own ground and power,
yeah.
into our own agency. And often we get paralysis because we think that means a really big, 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 big thing that I'm going to have to give my life to and do and become this and that. No.
Mm,
How do I simply lend my strength to
mm,
that which I stand for? That
yeah.
could be just moving with love in the world. That
Yeah.
could be making every child my child, right? So as I walk out in the street,
Mm,
how I tend the
mm,
stranger, how I tend the tree, how I blah, blah, blah. So it's what is mine?
mm.
What is mine? Yeah. I'm just noticing the time, Maria. I do have a client now.
Have to finish. We'll have to finish now. We'll have to go now. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we probably have a minute or two, but I'll
I
have to
feel
move.
so nourished and so soul fed, and I know we haven't even touched half of what we wanted to touch. This is just a scratching of the iceberg, but we can have another conversation. You brought so much wisdom and so much depth, and I am sure that the parents who are listening to this conversation, even if that's some is cooking, to just really leave some time on the side to tune into the energy that the sharings have been offered from.
Mm.
I just want to thank you from the depths of my heart for your time, for your being, for your heart in the world. I,
Thank you, Maria. And I want to thank you back for your amazing wisdom, your
mm,
openness, and your journey with 3 children. And that,
it's, it's a journey of descent and ascent,
mm,
but
yeah,
the
yeah,
same.
that immense, immense gift and the wisdom that's coming from that
Mm.
flows out of you. It's palpable. It's easy to see. So thank you for all that you do. Yeah.
From
Oh, yeah.
there to another. I'm going to stop the
Yeah.
record and I'll say goodbye properly.
Thank